Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Jedi Knight Jedi Academy for PC, Mac, and Xbox. This is a first-person shooter developed by Raven Software and published by LucasArts in 2003. It is the follow-up to Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, but it really doesn't have much to do with that story-wise. It just uses a few of the same characters, and that's kind of it. You can basically say it's a spin-off of the franchise. But it is the latest game in the Dark Forces franchise. And it was met with mixed opinions. For the most part, people said it was a good game, but there were a lot of fans that were really vocal about how much it sucked, in especially one particular aspect, but I'll get to that in a minute. And so the question becomes, were the fans right, or were they just hesitant to change? Because this did try to be quite a bit different from Jedi Outcast. So let's see how that went. Well, in terms of presentation, it's pretty much exactly the same as Jedi Outcast. I mean, it uses the same engine, the Quake 3 engine, and it uses a lot of the same assets that Jedi Outcast did. Models, animation, textures, all that. And they did sharpen up a few textures here and there. They did add in new content as well, new character models and such like that. But for the most part, the visuals are pretty much exactly the same. This isn't a bad thing, because at the time it still looked really good. The engine was starting to get a little bit dated, but other than that, it really looked quite good, and it really does still drive home that very Star Wars feel. And the new assets work really well. They're up to the same quality standard that Jedi Outcast was, but slightly higher in terms of clarity and sharpness. As for sound design, it's pretty much exactly the same. Still uses the John Williams score, which is, of course, wonderful. It still has pretty much exactly the same sound effects, in fact. For the most part, they did add in a few new ones here and there, but for the most part, everything sounds exactly the same as it did. Voice acting, they did add in some new voice actors to do their new characters and such, and they did a pretty good job, but it still comes across as a little bit cheesy to some degree. The Jedi Outcast voice actors were just better in general. And with the new one, Jedi Academy, they were like, they weren't quite as good. Let's put it that way. They seemed to take it a little bit less seriously and just kind of be, I am reading my script, blah, blah, blah. It's not horrible, don't get me wrong. And it really only comes across in a few lines where they were just blatantly not caring. But it's still kind of a step down from Jedi Outcast, where it really did sound like they put a little effort into what they were doing. But what it really comes down to are the story and the gameplay, and this is where things got very different from Jedi Outcast. For one, you don't play as Kyle Katarn anymore. Instead, you play as Jaden Korr. Now, Jaden is a new student at the Jedi Academy, and you actually get to define this character, because Jaden actually has pretty much no personality throughout the entire game. So you kind of assign your own personality if you want. But you do get to choose Jaden's gender, race, appearance in terms of just like face, as well as appearance in terms of clothing. And that can also include the different colors of clothing and such, different styles. And this is kind of an unprecedented level of customization that we never thought we would even get in the Jedi Knight franchise, or Dark Forces franchise, I should say. And it's a welcome addition. It's just the character, him or herself, has no personality, so we end up not really caring all that much. Still, it's kind of cool to have these customization options. It would have been nice to have maybe dialogue options later in the game, but we don't get that, so we don't really get to define the character personality-wise, just looks, and as well as the combat style. Now, you start off the game with a single lightsaber hilt. You get to choose what it looks like, and you get to choose the blade color, but that's it. Later on in the game, you'll actually get to choose whether you want to keep that single lightsaber or switch to a dual lightsaber style, or where you can have one blade be one color and one blade be another color, by the way. And you can also choose a lightsaber staff, which is basically what Darth Maul uses. So that's actually kind of a cool feature that they added in there. Lets you define your character more throughout the game, as opposed to having this very predetermined, very linear progression in terms of the character. Anyway, the story itself centers around Jaden being apprenticed to Kyle Katarn, along with this guy named Rosh Pennon, who is a completely annoying character that nobody likes, for good reason. He's just obnoxious the entire game, constantly. He's kind of that whiny sidekick kind of character that you're just like, oh, shut up, Rosh. And so The entire game, whenever Rosh pops in, it's basically a facepalm moment, because you'll be sitting there like, oh no, not again. But anyway, the story itself is Jaden and, of course, Kyle and Rosh confronting the Disciples of Ragnos. They're a Sith cult led by Tavion, who's from Jedi Outcast. And I don't want to spoil too much of the storyline, but suffice to say, you actually get to choose your ending in this one, unlike in the previous game. And in that regard, it's kind of a throwback to Jedi Knight 1. And it also throws back more into the idea that you're supposed to define this character yourself. But you can choose either a light side or a dark side ending. Neither of which are good, by the way. They do bring closure to the storyline, but they're just not impressive endings at all. You're just kind of like, whatever, I don't care anymore. And the story itself leading up to that is just kind of stupid as well. You're like, really? This plot makes... what? I mean, it's not a horrendously awful plot. It's just boring. There's not really a lot at stake, I should say. At least that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like there's much at stake. It feels like you're fighting this kind of disjointed battle throughout the entire game. And that is partly because of the mission structure. Now, you get a choice of 5 missions, and in between each choice of 5 missions, you get a story mission. And so this leads to you being able to choose how you want to play this game. And in fact, you only had to complete 80% of the missions in order to complete the game. You get, out of those 5 choices, you can choose 4, or you can play all 4 or all 5 of them. And you get to choose them in any order you wish. Each of these missions is completely disjointed. It has nothing to do with the overall storyline for the most part. Maybe loose connections. But in between, like I said, you get story missions, and these do actually progress the storyline quite a bit. In between these story missions and these other missions as well, you get little snippets of what's going on in relation to the storyline. But it really makes the story feel disjointed and very just not cohesive. So you're doing all these various objectives, just running around doing all sorts of random things, and that's just it. It feels too random. It doesn't feel like the story is connected enough to really hold together well. So ultimately, by the time the endings happen, you're just like, whatever, I don't care anymore. That said, the single-player gameplay is pretty much the same as it was in Jedi Outcast. It's just with that difference of being able to choose your force powers in between the missions. You actually get to put points into which powers you want, whether they're light or dark side, doesn't matter. And you get to choose what your character looks like and what your character's combat style is and all that. So that's nice. But it's just kind of a weak single player as a whole. While it does play pretty well for the most part, it just doesn't really feel all that fun. But then you get to the part where nobody contests this. The multiplayer for Jedi Academy is phenomenal. Partly because of the additions that they made to the game, and partly because they balance things out a little bit more. Now, if you watched my Jedi Outcast review, you know that the community for that game was phenomenal. Community for Jedi Academy was even better. And this is actually what really got me into online gaming. Before then, I was like, it's okay. But I ran into a bunch of really great guys guys and gals in Jedi Academy, and it just went from there. I just absolutely loved online gaming ever since. This had some of the best people you would ever meet. On top of that, it had really great gameplay. They added in a new game mode called Siege, which I admittedly never played all that much because whenever I tried to, it crashed the game. But it's basically an objective-based multiplayer mode where you have the 2 different teams fighting to keep each other from completing their objectives, all while trying to complete their objectives in the process. And it was a pretty cool mode when it actually worked. But like I said, it kept crashing on me, so I kept having problems with that. You still had the same basic modes from Jedi Outcast. You still had the free-for-all, team free-for-all, duels, capture the flag, stuff like that. And that's all still a blast to play. But the combat mechanics just feel a lot smoother. They feel tighter than Jedi Outcast did. Where, admittedly, when you were swinging your lightsaber around in Jedi Outcast, sometimes it would glitch out a little bit. It didn't really happen all that much in Jedi Academy. In fact, it felt very smooth and natural as opposed to this kind of clumsy, awkward movement that you would sometimes get in Jedi Outcast, and that was due to smashing lightsabers into each other and jumping all over the place and stuff like that. But the multiplayer itself was just fast and frenetic, and it was just a blast to play. It still is to this day. In fact, the community is still playing this. It's a lot smaller than it used to be, of course, but it's still around. It's still going strong, and people still enjoy this game in the multiplayer arena. All the customization options from the single player are available in the multiplayer as well. So you have that. You have a great modding community around it as well. I mean, they've developed phenomenal mods, maps, skins, you name it, they've done it. In fact, there's a really big mod right now called Movie Battles, where it aims to recreate the famous battles from the Star Wars movies, and that's really cool. And on top of that, while the single player itself is pretty weak, it's still pretty solid, and it's enough to get you through the single-player experience. Be like, okay, I know how to play this game, now go to the multiplayer, and oh, this is wonderful. All the features are still there. You still get to play against bots if you want. AI is a little bit weaker, though, so keep that in mind. The balancing is a lot different in this one. Lightsabers are much easier to kill with now, so they did put a lot more emphasis in that. And it is fairly easy to break the lightsabers if you know what you're doing. But for the most part, Jedi Academy is a phenomenal game. I give it a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching.